Hi, so I'm Ian, and I've been in Android for 9 years, been in desktop in the Khronos working group or Vulkan working group for longer. And I must say it's been an honor and a privilege, right? I work with some great people, both in Google and in the Vulkan working group, and we work really hard. Even though in the Vulkan working group we might come from different companies who have different goals and so forth, we really come together and try and work to make sure that developers' lives are better. So great stuff. Okay, so I think everybody knows why Vulkan is great, why we moved to it and are giving up OpenGLES or GLES is what we frequently refer to it as. I'll point out one thing that maybe we haven't talked about a lot, which is power consumption, right? Vulkan allows you to get not only get better performance and features, but it can allow you to get better battery life. So important thing. And we've been seeing some really great benefits lately with games that are switching from Glass to Vulkan on Android, right? So good things, again, performance, battery life, features, etc. So good things. And even for some of the games that are not particularly graphically intensive, they're getting benefits from it. So good stuff. So what's our strategy? It's been the same for quite a while, right? We're trying to move from that red box being Vulkan or being Glass to being Vulkan, right? We want everything to be on top of Vulkan, whether directly or indirectly. And we're really trying to help the industry focus, right? The Android ecosystem focus on let's get everything working on Vulkan. And we don't want it just to work, right? We want it to work really well. We want your software to shine, right? And so we're working hard to try and bring that about. And another point is, and I think a few people have mentioned this at times, especially during breaks, is that most software is not going to use directly Vulkan, right? Most games, most applications are going to use an engine or middleware or a layered API, right? Some will have their own custom engine, whatever, but a lot of people are going to use, a major engine. Um, and I'm going to talk about two of the layered APIs real quick here. First one is Angle, right? A few people have mentioned Angle during the conference. It is a GLES 3.2 conformant layered implementation, right? So we one of the talks sort of talked about the two-phase thing. From one direction, Angle is an engine. From another direction, it's a driver, right? It's a driver that doesn't talk directly to hardware; it talks to Vulkan. And great thing. So this is going to be our long-term solution, right? That everything's going to move to Vulkan. And if somebody wants to stay on Glass long term, it's going to be using Angle. And actually, there are phones today that use Vulkan or use Angle as their Glass driver and get great functionality. So it's been pretty mature. For Android 16, we're going to require devices to use it for some applications and allow list. For Android 17, we'll change that to a deny list. So most everything will use Angle. And by the way, I'll mention when I'm speaking about Android on some of these things, I'm referring to phones and tablets, handheld devices, right? So Android TV, Android Auto might be different, but this is the most demanding workloads are with phones and tablets. WebGPU. So WebGPU is a new API developed combination in W3C for web browsers, but Google's implementation has a native implementation similar to Angle, actually started by the same people who did Angle. And so we have this native implementation, and we are going to do C++ and Java and Kotlin bindings so that a regular app can use it. You don't have to be a web app to use it on Android. Coming soon here, right? So good things. And actually, go back there real quick. You don't need to do something now, but you'll be able to try it out. And where we're targeting this is for more simple apps, right? The demanding apps are really going to need to use an engine or something that's using Vulkan. But for something that's doing something simple, if you want to get some of the benefits of Vulkan, but you don't want to do all the work, WebGPU would be a good thing for you. So I said, we want all your software to work really well on top of Vulkan. What do you need to do that? Well, you need consistent set of features. And early on, with Vulkan on Android, that wasn't the case, right? It's like everybody had different features. So we're trying to work on that. We're trying to work on engine support, correctness, stability, performance. We don't want performance surprises. It's like, okay, yeah, great. This phone is 2x faster than that phone. It should be 2x faster on average for everything. There shouldn't be cases where it's 100x faster, right? We don't want performance surprises. So I'll talk about what some of these things mean then. So in terms of getting consistent Vulkan features, we've been targeting a number of Vulkan profiles, and sometimes we've mentioned that during the week here. I'm going to go into each of those. So Android baseline profile. So these are backwards-looking profiles that reflect what's commonly available to, at the time that we created it. So at the end of 2021, we created the Android baseline profile 2021, and it reflected what was available on 85% or more of the active devices. And active devices doesn't mean everything that was shipped, all the new stuff that, included really old things that people were still using. If it was active, we could tell it was active. We could see what did it provide, right? So at the end of 2021, you only got Vulkan 1.0 if you wanted to be using something that was pervasive, plus some additional extension features, formats, and so forth. With 2022, a year later, that bumped up to Vulkan 1.1 and some additional extensions and so forth. And we're planning on doing another version of this Android baseline profile at some point because we've heard software developers say, tell us what's available, widely available now, right? This is the backward looking, right? This reflects as one person put it, this is descriptive, right? This is telling you what's commonly available. On the other hand, we've been talking to software developers and trying to understand what do you need for your software to work well? And we're going to be doing more of this. So please come talk to us if we haven't already talked to you. So Vulkan profiles for Android, VPA. I'm the guy for the hardware people who are like, who to blame? Come talk to me, right? I'm your guy. This is where we talk to software developers. What do you need for your software to work well? Then we talk to the IP vendors, right? So Pete's company and others, hey, when can you deliver this? And then we start making requirements. Okay, to Android 16, VPA 16. And it's kind of fuzzy font here, gray, but our profiles are then designed to be additive, right? So Android baseline profile 2022, VPA 15 includes that. VPA 16 includes all of that and adds. VPA 17, again, additive, right? So and these are proscriptive or prescriptive, whatever the right verb is or word is. I'm an engineer, so English isn't, C++ is more my native language, but but these are things that we're trying to do to tell everybody, hey, with the new hardware, and because of something called Google Requirements Freeze, we can't make everybody who goes to Android 16 do all of these things, but we can say if you're new or if you're really old and you're trying to get to Android 16, then you have to do these things, right? So over time, that's going to lift the boats. And with VPA 16, this was the first time we started saying we're going to raise the hardware requirements, right? There are cases, I'll hit that, yeah, right here, where there are some older GPUs that didn't provide everything that people needed. And so we're going to start saying, if you're going to do new silicon, you have to meet these requirements. And as we worked with our IP vendor friends, they're like, hey, time to X out this one, time to X out that one. So over time, you'll see the boats rising, right? This is one of the reasons why Vulkan hadn't taken off as fast with Android. And again, we're pushing to try and meet your needs. So then we get to Vulkan 1.4. So we tried to play a hand in pushing this, right? Because we've been, again, trying to meet your guys' needs. So we initially, as the stake in the ground was, okay, Vulkan 1.4 has to be a proper subset of VPA 16. And the idea was, okay, there are some markets that don't need, all the things that handheld Android devices need, TVs, cars, whatever. They don't need all of those things. So Vulkan 1.4 doesn't necessarily need everything that's in VPA 16, but there's a starting point, and that's one of the things, again, that we were pushing on. And um, yeah, maximal reconvergence. We had that talk earlier, right? That's in VPA 16, and it's in Vulkan 1.4, and it might have got there anyway if we hadn't pushed on it, but again, we're kind of pushing on the things that you need. So that's what we tried to do, and then with Android 16, 1.4 is supported, right? So our Vulkan loader supports it, and a driver could be 1.4. But if it's new silicon, then by golly, it has to have all the 1.4 functionality, even if it doesn't say it's a 1.4 driver. So again, trying to push that. And then when we get to Vulkan 1. Or get to Android 17, then we're going to say you have to do 1.4 plus, right? So again, it's additive. And over time, that means that everything that is in a certain VPA is going to be in a future Android baseline profile, right? It'll be pervasive. So, we're pushing it as fast as we can. So improving engine support. So again, a lot of people, especially a lot of games, are going to be using an engine. They're not going to be going directly to Vulkan. Some will, but again, a lot are going to use an engine. And so we're working with all the major vendors, trying to help them improve their Vulkan renderers, right? I worked on Angle for a little while, so I learned some things. And as I was talking with an engine vendor about something that I had optimized, that they hadn't, we compare notes, right? By helping each other, all the boats rise. So we're trying to work with folks and so forth, trying to collaborate on the new features and make their software shine. And then at this point, as far as we know, all of the major engines make Vulkan their default driver. Now, again, we'll get to another thing as to why, in some cases, game vendors say, yeah, that's the default, but we're going to still go back to Glass. We're attacking that problem too. But at this point, everybody has a good Vulkan renderer, and over time, it will improve. So there's risk, right? Because as some people have pointed out, not all the phones update, right? They might go, they have this thing called Google Requirements Freeze, which means they don't have to update their drivers for a few releases. And so there's risk, right? And so in some cases, it's like, okay, rather than just stay at Glass, we'll work with the engine vendor to make it so that we can tell them, hey, you should use Vulkan on these devices, and then you can use Glass for the rest. So a de-risking mechanism. And so again, if we haven't talked to you and you're an engine vendor, come talk to us. We're happy to help. We want, again, your software to shine. And again, we've started with the large engine vendors. I have a link here on the slide that is gray. It doesn't show up really well on the monitor, but if you watch the video and stuff or pull down the slides, you'll be able to see it. Correctness. People have talked about there are bugs, right? I'm a driver writer, and we write bugs. Guess what? Application vendors do too. We all do, right? So no throwing rocks. Let's just come clean, right? Admit, hey, we all write bugs. So over time, right, we want to make things work better. We want them to, work correctly. We want it to be stable. We don't want crashes, stuff like that. So we're working with people, right? We're working with driver people to improve their testing, to the degree, drivers improve with exposure to content. So the more we can get Vulkan content, the more that they'll be able to test their drivers and catch the bugs that maybe they haven't caught before, right? Similarly, applications improve with exposure to drivers. If you write and test your software on only one device, guess what? You go to the next device, you may discover that you did something wrong. So we're working with people to do that. We're working on telemetry, so forth, to identify things and so forth, working with the game engine developers. Nice little circle here, right? I talked a little bit more about that last year's Vulkanized. And then again, working closely with the hardware partners. And so a lot of you, if you find a bug that you suspect is a driver bug, you might go talk to your hardware partner. If you're having a hard time, come talk to us, right? We'll help connect everything. And we're also pushing to get more frequent driver updates. And this is a case where in some cases, particularly on the low end, people don't want to update their drivers, but we're doing things to, can't announce the details, but we're working on things to make sure that drivers get updated more frequently. And that will make your lives easier. And yes, one of my British colleagues pointed out the thing that at least I always hear when I'm riding on the tube in London, see it, say it, sorted, tell us about things. And we'll work on it to help you, right? And if there are things that you learn that would help us or to disseminate it out to help other people, again, same thing, right? Pete just mentioned how ARM is exposing a public errata. Hey, we can all help each other here. So let's do those things. Avoiding performance surprises, right? We don't want any of those things. But again, I know when I was working on Angle in the early days, it was developed to be functional first, and then let's make it go fast. And yes, I saw those things where it's like, okay, we have 20 render passes. Don't need that, right? We could get by with 1, 2, or 3 or something, depending on what we're doing. So we're working on a new profiler, right? With Samsung. Stay tuned in the next talk. You want to stay here, right? Don't leave. And so again, trying to come up with something so that there'll be a common profiler, and then we're working with the hardware vendors to make sure that you can get the information you need so that you can work well on all of the mobile GPUs. And very important thing, and hopefully you'll like it. We've heard of cases where people can't do things now. We have Android Graphics Inspector, but what we're working on is going to be better. Right, and of course, all the GPU vendors have their own tools, but again, we're going to try and come up with something that would be the first tool that you'd want to use. So, in summary, Vulkan has a lot of advantages. You all know that, right? It has some disadvantages too. A little hard to work with, but we're as a working group and so forth, we're working on that. In Android, we're trying to make sure that software can work really well, and working to improve the consistency, the engine support, the stability, performance, etc. So whether you're a hardware person or a software person, please come work with us closely, and we'll try and make sure that you're all successful. So that's the end. Questions?
Yeah, so it's not a question, but I guess just reinforcing Ian's point of please come and talk to us. It doesn't have to be a crash or a device lost. It could be a weird performance quirk. It could just be something not quite working. It could be something just not well documented. We are very interested in helping you guys be successful. It helps Android as an ecosystem be more profitable for everybody, and that drives a bigger pie. So yeah, please do come to talk with us, talk with Google. We collaborate very closely. If we don't get told about things for a year or 18 months, then that's a big issue. One thing I would say is feedback on new features and like new driver things is really important. If game devs go, well, it's new, I'm not going to touch it for 3 years, and then you try using it in 3 years' time and it's a bit rough, the latency of us getting the fixes in is even longer, right? So please do poke new features, even if you're not planning on shipping them, just give them a go, work out whether you can or can't use them, and that feedback is super valuable.
Exactly. Just, the drivers improve with exposure to content.
Exactly.
So please, yeah, thanks.
Okay, so if no other questions, let's thank you again. Oh, no, there's one. Yeah.
What about the devices that are only supporting OpenGL? How many are there left?
It's less than 15%, and these are old devices. So there are some old ones that didn't even support GLES 3.0, much less Vulkan capable. But they're pretty well dying out, right? So with Android 16, we're going to require GLES 3.1. So we're killing off those. The problem is if somebody is still using one of the really ancient ones. But again, they're dying fast.
I hope they die very fast because business people will still want to support them as long as they give any kind of revenue. So at the moment, we still have to support them, and it's quite difficult sometimes. I was wondering, maybe it's impossible to do, but would there be any kind of way Google could do like maybe some rewards on Play Store for people upgrading to a device that supports Vulkan?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Doing some kind of reward program, like maybe some store credit in the Play Store for people upgrading to Vulkan, like upgrading their device.
Oh, trade-in, yeah.
Yeah, like they do for people switching to electric cars, basically.
Yeah. If we could buy somebody a new device, that would be good.
Thanks. Great job, Ian. A couple of things I just wanted to emphasize that when Ian was going through the slides. One was that in Android 14, we now require Vulkan 1.1, which is great. Like that was the first time we could enforce a significant version of Vulkan in Android.
And that's for all devices.
Yeah. Any device that's upgrading to Android 14. Android's ecosystem has always been complicated. Maybe it will always be complicated. We are trying to defragment as we go, but it's tough. The other thing to emphasize was 40% plus of sessions of games that were released in the last 6 months on Unity are now in Vulkan, and that is a huge step up. So it might be shocking, but let's say our telemetry has improved greatly. I wish it was better 10 years ago, but it wasn't, but now it is. And we're able to see, we didn't show any graphs today because there's sensitivity and Google doesn't like sharing that kind of information. However, we can assure you that it is going up in the right direction. And is growing over time. Even since we've had good telemetry, we've been like, wow, we've crossed that threshold. We've crossed that threshold. So in terms of viability of a, kind of a Vulkan only title, whether it be a game or an app, I mean, we're still a long ways away from that if you want to support that long tail of Android devices, but it's very encouraging. I think in the last few years, it's been slower, and now we're seeing all the changes. And even from our relationships with the vendors, we're seeing more engagement in this space, which is great. So thanks.
Any more?
Okay, I think we will now. Thank you for his.
Thank you much.
presentation.